Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Diamond. I'm the founder of Cherry Bombe and the host of Radio Cherry Bombe, and I want to welcome you to our holiday baking extravaganza. Obviously, we're not doing any baking tonight. Tonight, we're doing a special panel called When the Holidays Are Hard. And I want to thank all of you for joining us, and I especially want to thank our panelists and our moderator for taking part in tonight's programming. Everybody knows, that this has been such an unprecedented year and a challenging year for everyone on so many levels. And as the Cherry Bombe team and I were putting together the programming for the baking extravaganza, we knew from the start that it couldn't just be, baking demos and cookies and things like that. We wanted to address what's on a lot of people's minds, and that is that the holidays can be really hard. And so many of us, our businesses and our lives get caught up in social media and things like that. And there's just so much pressure to be positive and cheerful and enthusiastic, even when we're not feeling that way. So we put this panel together, and I'm really happy that all of you have joined us. To start, I would like to just go through a few housekeeping matters. I know all of you are familiar with Zoom now, so you know the chat box right down there. So I encourage all of you to use the chat tonight. Everyone's always very respectful, and because we're dealing with very sensitive matters tonight, I would ask that you all be just extra sensitive in the chat box. Also, we have Q&A box. You all know that. That is somewhere down on the line. We're going to be answering your questions at the end of the panel. So feel free to put some questions in the Q&A box, and we will hopefully get to all of your questions if you have them. And if you don't, that's okay too. I would also like to thank the sponsors of our holiday baking extravaganza, Kerrygold, a wonderful brand, and Amazon Home, another wonderful brand. Thanks to them, we've been able to do all this free programming, including tonight's panel. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our moderator for the evening, Katie Rose Glickman. Katie, are you out there? Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. I should explain to everybody how our relationship came about and how you wound up being the moderator tonight. Katie and I were introduced through my brother. Katie and my brother have worked together, and I got to know Katie and just, was so immediately taken with Katie's, just passion and enthusiasm and the empathy and big heart that Katie has. Katie, Katie will talk about this, but Katie lost her dad, and she started an Instagram account called Cooking Through Grief to try to help other people who are kind of going through what she's been going through. And Katie, you've helped so many people with your Instagram account. You really are just a bright light for so many of us. And I just wanted to thank you. I know it's not easy to put out there what you put out there on a regular basis.
Well, thank you very much. My friend who texted me right before this to say, don't cry, I'm going to try very hard not to. So I appreciate your very kind words. And also just the fact that Cherry Bombe wanted to have this conversation tonight, I think giving us this platform. So thank you to you, to Donna for organizing this. I'm hoping we can have a really great conversation.
Katie, so I'm sorry to interrupt. I did forget to tell everybody, we would love to know where you're tuning in from. So why doesn't everybody just take a second and in the chat box, let us know what city, state, country you're tuning in from. Okay, go ahead, Katie, sorry.
I'm currently in very dark 7 p.m. Brooklyn. So
same here. I have every light fixture in my studio surrounding me right now. Yeah.
I can go ahead if people, I can introduce myself a little bit if the other panelists want to turn on their cameras too. We can get started.
Katie, I'm going to say bye. So I will see everybody during the Q&A. Don't forget, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A box. And thank you in advance to the panelists and to you, Katie, okay?
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
So I just wanted to start quickly, just a tiny bit about my story and why I'm here. As Carrie mentioned, my dad died in May of 2019 after being very sick with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia for about 5 years. I had stopped working right at the end of his life and really struggled to get back on my feet for a few months. During that time, I wasn't doing much other than cooking, kind of like a crazy person. My dad and I shared a love of cooking, and I think cooking helped me feel more productive in that time. and slightly more connected with him when I was in the kitchen. So I started that Instagram account late last summer, basically as a place to house all these pictures I was taking, and as a way to start processing some of my grief out loud. I had absolutely no idea that how a shared experience of grief can bring people together. So these amazing women here tonight have all actually lost a parent too. Each of them have lost their mom. I have lost my dad. Tonight, we're going to talk about our experiences with that type of grief, but I also want to acknowledge that you do not have to have lost an immediate loved one to be feeling the depths of grief in this holiday season. Everything we know to be has changed in the last 10 months. Collectively, we have lost loved ones to COVID and not to COVID, jobs, marriages, pregnancies, businesses, and in particular for an organizer like me, the ability to plan and dream more than a few weeks ahead. So I'm going to let these wonderful women introduce themselves as we jump into our panel. But after speaking to them earlier this week, I don't think there are enough hours in the week for the amount of stories and insights that they have to share about this very widespread topic. I have a handful of questions for them tonight, and as Carrie said, please use the Q&A feature and we'll jump in at the end to answer some of your questions as well. So if everyone could turn on their cameras. Great. So just to start off, hi, I'm Marissa, I can't see you yet. There she is with her Cherry Bombe pink wall. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. As I've mentioned, and it's pretty clear at this point, this is a really tough year for all of us, especially those that can't be with their loved ones. So let's just start with by talking about what are you doing to stay sane right now? I'm going to start with Gabby.
Oh, hi, thank you. I was unmuting my microphone. Hi, everyone. Interesting question. What am I doing? Well, I just finished writing a book. And what I'm trying to do is I'm meditating a lot. I went back to the drawing board and started meditating again. And I think that's what's been keeping me sane for the last 3-4 weeks.
Marissa, what are you doing to stay sane right now? I know you're very busy.
Yes, very busy. And it's funny, I feel like I'm constantly giving advice to other people about how to stay sane in the midst of things being busy and in the midst of a lot of grief. And I've been doing a terrible job of taking my own advice. But I'm currently facing my Peloton, and I have been riding the bike and exercising and just doing a lot of writing. You know, that is, as you and I have discussed, how I tend to process things. So those are my tools right now.
Kiki?
I crochet. Like, it's a compulsion at this point. Like, it started off as a hobby, and I was doing things like crocheting, like copying things around the house. So I don't I'll make the odd dog sweater, but I won't I'll challenge myself and like try to like focus my hands with my brain and try to like replicate something in yarn that's never been replicated in yarn before. And this sort of hobby slash side hustle has also opened me up to like new friends that I never would have met or spoken to in my very recent past life. So that's been really, really wonderful. And I don't know, I feel like it's a spectrum. Like it started off as a hobby and to like keep myself sane, and now like I need it desperately.
I love that. And I think they just put it in the chat, but you can be able to see some of Kiki's awesome crochet work. So check that out. We'll just kind of jump in and talk about the holidays a little bit, but this time of year can be just very triggering and hard for those of us that have lost a loved one. It's, for me at least, it's when we notice their absence the most, whether it's at the dinner table or in the kitchen in my case. But this year, many people's traditions and plans have changed dramatically. And many of us are barely seeing our families. I didn't see my family for Thanksgiving, and I'm not planning to for Christmas. And so my question for you all is, what would your normal holiday traditions be if it weren't a pandemic? And how have they changed this year? Or really, how have they changed since you lost your mom or your person? I'll start with Marissa.
Great. You know how I feel about holidays. So I am glad you started with me. So my mom passed away almost 13 years ago. So at this point, I've sort of transitioned from that like early, very disorienting, just really, really challenging grief place to more, how do I think about what my life looks like in the midst of having lost this person who meant so much? And how do I bring her into, our family's holiday traditions? I'm married to a man who never met my mother. So everything that he knows about her, he has to experience, through me, through my father, through other family and friends. And so when we were kids, my mom was, I called her the queen of Christmas. She literally started Christmas shopping in August. The day after Thanksgiving was spent decorating the house top to bottom, inside and out. She even set the table for Christmas the day after Thanksgiving, and we only had one table that we could eat at. So literally every day until December 25th, you were moving the Christmas plates to the side so that you could eat whatever she had made for dinner that night. And we baked tons of cookies. She was a phenomenal baker. I have her sweet tooth. It turns out my dad loves sweets too. So does my sister. So it was lots of baking of cookies, freezing cookies, freezing cookie dough. And so I tried to bring that back with the help of a very supportive partner. Gosh, probably now 7, 8 years ago, we organized an annual holiday party that we call affectionately Tacos and Baby Jesus. And it's Mexican food and cookies. And we do the cookie swap, and everyone has to wear costumes and ridiculous outfits. And it's a great time where we also do a food drive for our local food pantry. Obviously, that is not happening this year. And so we've been trying to figure out, how can we at least recreate the spirit of that party? Is it through encouraging folks to donate to their local food pantry? Is it, a cookie swap with one of my girlfriends who is local? We can do it safe and socially distanced. So those are some of the things that we're looking to do over the course of the next week, because it is a very, very different holiday. And I am trying to balance, maintaining my commitment to being joyful and celebratory because I love Christmas, with my need to rest and grieve and acknowledge my feelings. And it's hard.
Are you setting the table? Have you already set the table like your mom did?
So I haven't set the table, but I absolutely will set the table. You may remember my Thanksgiving place settings with, the double plates that we didn't even really need and the fork for a salad that we didn't actually have. So yes, I have ordered the flowers. I will absolutely be setting the table. And I just ordered the ingredients for sticky toffee pudding with salted bourbon caramel sauce. So
wow. Okay, I'm coming over next year.
You got it.
Kiki, what are some of your kind of normal holiday traditions, and how are you celebrating this year?
So I live in Philadelphia, and I'm the only one in my family who lives on the East Coast of the continental US. My family's half in Hong Kong and half in Hawaii. And so normally in winter for Thanksgiving, I'll travel back to Hawaii to spend time with my dad's family, and for Christmas and like right before New Year's, I'm usually in Hong Kong, and then I fly back to Hong Kong for Chinese New Year. So obviously I'm not doing that. I am staying very much here, and it's really, I don't really know how it's going to, how Christmas is going to feel without like all of that travel yet. Thanksgiving, I mean, my family's in Hawaii, which is very, very vulnerable to COVID. So everybody was like, don't come. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm definitely not coming. And there wasn't a gathering. So like on the one hand, I didn't really feel like I was like missing out because we were all in the same boat. But yeah, for Christmas, normally my family gets together. My Uncle Charlie's birthday is Christmas Eve. So there's always like a big family dinner, and my family's enormous on both sides. I'm Catholic, so huge family. Yeah, and like so huge that like for like the last family reunion in Hawaii, we rented out a baseball park, and like 500 people showed up. Like my family's gigantic. So like I'm used to like going back to Hawaii and people are like, oh my gosh, I missed you so much. Which one are you?
That's amazing.
And then in Hong Kong, like I miss being like lost in like everybody else. I miss like being, I mean, I'm not a kid anymore, but I miss like us, like all the kids being confused. Like, oh, right, you live in California, right? And I'm like, no, I live in Philadelphia. So yeah, I miss that like constant, like wonderful, like loving confusion. But I'm here. We just had snow.
Yeah.
So tired.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to go to a baseball field too next year. I'm inviting myself around the clock. Gabby, how are you planning to celebrate? I know that I know this time of year could be really hard for you. This is when your mom was the most sick. So this can be a really tough time just living in that. How are you planning to honor her this Christmas? Is there anything that you're gonna cook that?
I am. And I must say, I don't have Marisa's tradition, and Kiki, I don't have that large family. Like everybody knows pretty well who I am, so I can't really compare. I must say that being, I'm not from here, so I've been an immigrant here. It's the amount of people, it gets reduced. So I haven't had a Christmas like I will have in my country in 25 years. And in Argentina it's summer, so the meal is completely different, although we follow a very like European sort of tradition. So some of the stuff you eat are like heavy in calories, but the one thing that it kind of resurfaced just talking about this, and because of COVID, and I'm probably going to spend the day alone in my house the same way I did for Thanksgiving, I started reminiscence of what my mom used to cook. And she used to make a salad that in Argentina we call Russian salad, ensalada rusa. I don't know if anybody who speaks Spanish here. And it's just a basic potato salad with peas and carrots. But the interesting thing is, today I actually talked to my brother, and he remembered more details about the Russian salad. She used to make this Russian salad in the shape of a Christmas tree, and then she had these cutters. It's old school 70s and 80s, like Tupperware have these cutters. So she will cut carrots that probably was so hard with a raw carrot in like ornament shapes and decorated with like parsley. So I finally must say that after almost 5 years that she passed, in January it's going to be 5 years, I'm kind of thankful because of COVID and the opportunity of being home, and me like just like changing the way I work, not working for the magazine anymore. There's no, I'm in Jersey City, so if you're in another part of the world, like we had a big snowstorm, and when my mom died, 3 days later, we had a humongous snowstorm, a nor'easter, and last night's snowstorm made me realize that in the last 5 years, I haven't really paid attention to like snow or heat or anything, because I was just so busy working, and trying to get somewhere. And if anything, like bless the pandemic, because now I kind of stop and I was like, you know what? This is how I'm going to celebrate and I'm going to honor her. I am going to make the Christmas tree out of the Russian salad, and I'm going to eat it myself. So, I guess that's a good way to remember her.
I think that's wonderful. I can't wait to see pictures of how you're going to construct a carrot Christmas tree, but I'm very excited for it. So grief is something that's both very personal and very collective. And dealing with it is also personal and collective, is what I've learned, at least. And for me, at least, the same thing goes for cooking. We cook to eat, and we cook to feed others. And so if it has, which I'm going to go ahead and assume it has, because we are all on this panel, what ways has cooking helped connect to your grief? How has cooking played a role in your process? Kiki, I know that this kind of has changed a bit through the years for you, and owning a restaurant, having a sauce company now too. Do you want to share a little bit about that? How cooking's been part of your process?
Yeah, so for me, cooking has always been my profession. Well, like not always, since I switched professions 8 years ago, but I didn't grow up in a cooking family on either side. I grew up in like eating families. So both in, I think like Hong Kong, we have like the highest like per capita of like restaurants. And so it was and on both sides is very much like an eating out culture on both sides. So it was when I moved to so I was born in the US, but then I moved here as an adult. Like I didn't really grow up on the mainland. But I always considered myself an eater more than a cook. And for me, the process of cooking has always been like, this is work. So I owned a restaurant called Poi Dog that was also a food truck and catering business here in Philadelphia in Center City up until July. And we were one of the first COVID closures in Philadelphia because we were based in such an expensive part of the city. And of course, there are many reasons that contributed to the closing, but when dealing with Poi Dog, when bringing it to term, it was like the very first idea was to bring food to Philadelphia that I missed for very selfish reasons, because I missed the food. And I didn't really, like I had to figure things out on my own. Like I had to teach myself how to make these dishes that I grew up eating. So for me, like I don't find the process of cooking very, very soothing, but I find certain dishes to be really, really meaningful. And like eating those dishes is like the process that I need the most, I guess, especially around the holidays. So I told this to the women behind Cherry Bombe, but I've actually never spoken about the loss of my mother in public at all. So this is the first time I've like even like uttered those words in any sort of public forum. But I'm like in my house with like my puppy next to me, so it's kind of a safe space. So I was very young when she passed away. I was 15. So she's been gone 20 years. And there are a few dishes that we loved to like go out and eat. And they're not the sort of things that like, you know, I grew up in Hawaii and Hong Kong. So like, in order to eat that stuff, I kind of had to make it. So a lot of it was just like trial and error, trying to replicate those flavors of like when we went out to get this dish. It was like our dish. In Cantonese, it's called yoksi tao mein. And in Mandarin, it's roast tao mian. So basically, I would just like constantly order this dish when I was out. I wouldn't tell anybody why, but I would like go all over Hong Kong and order this dish. And my friends were like, you can order something else. Like you can order something different. Like, why do you always get these like this one dish of noodles? And like, why do you like order it in like the crazy way so that we're embarrassed like when you're ordering it? Because so it's a composed dish of like fried noodles with like a very like rich gravy sauce over it. But I would always like be very difficult and order like the gravy aside from the noodles. And they were always in places that were like on the street where like it's really fast service and nobody wants to stop and take care of you. They just want to like give you your food. So I'd be like, oh, excuse me, like can you like do this thing to my dish? And they're like, no. I'm like, no, but please. So like for years I was doing this, but I never actually told anybody why until like just now. So it was the special dish that I shared with my mother when I was very, very young, and I have eaten it like every place there is like there are Chinese people, and now I make it at home, and I make it like once a year, and I basically eat it for 4 days.
Oh,
Oh my God.
that's great.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And this is 100% a safe space. So I really just thank you for sharing that. Is that one of the dishes that you're now doing virtual cooking classes with?
Yes. So when you close a restaurant, it turns out that a lot of people ask you to cook in front of your computer. Very, very helpful for my career, I guess. So yeah, I've started like making that, and it's to make like wontons. It's like a very similar marinade. It's like totally different. How it like turns out is totally different, but the marinating of the meat, it goes through the same process whether you're making dumplings or yoksitamin. So I started teaching like dumpling classes because I'm like, I can do this in my sleep. I don't really have to do prep. Like it looks fancy and difficult, but like it's really like I can do it in my sleep, and I don't measure anything, and it always turns out tasting the same. So I started incorporating like these little memories into how I talk about food, what food means to me, and and usually it just comes out as like dumplings and noodles.
Probably my two favorite foods. So there you go. Well, thank you so much. Gabby, I wanted to ask you the same question. How has cooking played a role in kind of processing your grief from your mother? I know we talked about a few fun stories of discovering what was in her freezer when you were cleaning out her apartment and what that meant. But please share what
First, Kiki, I want to hug you so much, and now I want to eat the noodles.
Yeah, I'll make you the noodles.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the first things I wanted to do, I mean, my mom passed, and like I said, 3 days later, it was like the biggest nor'easter we had in ages. My brother reminded me today that it snowed for 26 hours straight. Just Google it. It was 2016, after Martin Luther King Day. So after, we were like with the snow up to here, I needed to go to her apartment because my mom lived at a senior a resident building, and they give you a certain time you have to empty the place. And if anybody knows me, I'm like not a professional, but I'm an organizer. I work organizing people's homes for many years, and kitchens, and my guilty pleasure is watching hoarders, and like I love to empty places. So anyway, my main thing was like, we gotta empty this apartment. So here we go with my brother, and the first thing that I tackled was her kitchen, because it was the place that I knew the most. I was like her main source of like food for the last like 6-7 months when she was sick. So I knew exactly what she had, but I didn't know what she had in her freezer. So here we are with my brother. It's really cold. It's January, and he's only been in the States for 5 days, and no, but by now it's like 8 days, and my mom was gone already. And he's trying to figure out how my mother lived in such a small space because it was a studio apartment, and trying to like go through things and understand what's going on. For me, it was like a day to day because I went to her house sometimes twice a day. So here I go, and I opened the freezer, and I found this glass dish, a Pyrex, covered with plastic wrap with the clean one. And then I looked into it, and what I see is my mom's fish, and this the recipe that forever will be called my mom's fish. That is basically either cod or whitey that she cooked in the oven over a layer of potatoes and peppers and onions and olive oil and spices. And then she threw it in the oven for who knows how long, and it was usually overcooked. But it was delicious, and sometimes lemon juice. But she will make a big batch and then portion it. But I guess at this point, she was like, like she made it at some point, and she had like the pies with like a few pieces left. So So I look at my brother, and obviously we were both hungry, and we looked at each other, and I showed him the fish, and he's like, let's heat it up and eat it. And I'm like taking the plastic wrap out and thinking, oh my God, is this safe to eat? How long? Obviously, it wasn't dated, like it had no name, nothing. So here we are, my brother and I. My mom is gone. Fish is in the oven. We sat down. I don't know what we drank. It was lunch, probably wine. And we're eating her fish, and she's still feeding us even when she's dead. And I was like, I'm never gonna forget. This was probably her best, although it always tasted different. And I had replicated that dish so many times, and it never comes out the same. I don't know what her secret was, but it's amazing how food can keep us, connected and remind us that at the end of the day, that's all we have. So to this day, every time I make it, I call it my mom's fish. Never tasted the same.
I love that story so much. I think I'm starting to see in the chat, and I have a similar story, but I think there's something very powerful with the freezer and grief and the things that you find about from when that person was still alive and then eating it and what that means. And I did that with chicken soup. I had chicken soup in my freezer for 6 months because I had made it before my dad had passed, and I couldn't bring myself to make it, to actually defrost it and eat it. So I admire that you were able to eat it right away. I have a question. This is from Marissa, I think, because Marissa is working on a lot of projects, and I'm just going to celebrate her here, which is that she's currently writing a book about grief, which is pretty incredible. But and this is for everyone, but we'll start with Marissa. What are some of the things that you've learned in your 13 years of grieving, which is tremendous, in this process, that you would like to share with folks that are going through it right now, or things that you wish you had known, or resources that have been the most helpful to you in your process?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's a hard one. There have been a lot of lessons in almost 13 years. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is that grief isn't just about the time of death. You're hearing stories from women who are recreating recipes and eating things and doing things years later. And that's because for me, the way that I define grief now is it is the repeated experience of learning to live in the midst of a significant loss. My mom, again, has been dead for almost 13 years. I still have to go through the process at different points of figuring out how to live in the midst of that grief, because I still want her to be here. I am almost 38 years old. I have things that I want her to experience alongside me. There have even been moments in the midst of this pandemic where, frankly, I am grateful that my mom, who had multiple sclerosis and stage 4 breast cancer, isn't here, because I don't know how we would be caring for her. But I also want her to be here to comfort me, which is incredibly self-centered, but that is the truth. When my husband and I lost a pregnancy last year, I remember this moment of being on our bathroom floor, like so sick, trying to fit myself onto the rug in front of our shower. And all I wanted was my mom. And it didn't matter how long she'd been gone for. And that also goes with positive things. When we got engaged, I wanted my mom there, because my husband, as wonderful as he is and as great of a fiance as he was, he didn't care about all of these little details. What were we going to have for this one little appetizer? Or why were these napkins so expensive? That's so stupid. Like, he didn't care about that stuff. So I think the biggest thing is, don't expect and don't let anyone else tell you that you're being sad for too long, or that at some point you're going to get over it. Like, what is there to get over? Someone who you love is no longer here. You don't have to get over that. You just have to figure out how to love them in a way that makes sense for you for the rest of your life. That's all you have to do. So that for me is the biggest thing. And then I think the second thing, which I am trying to apply in my life right now, is, give yourself some grace. Like, this is a really hard time. We're talking about dead parents and restaurants closing and people losing their jobs and people dying from COVID. It's a lot. Like, give yourself a pass. Like, it's okay if you don't cook, if you don't do these things that, you hope to do to celebrate the season and honor lost loved ones. Like, it's okay to just be on the couch watching Netflix. Like, don't let anyone judge you.
I think that is some of the best advice. And Marissa has been sort of my, I don't know if I should call it a grief mentor or just buddy over this last year and a half for me. And she's provided me so much joy and also solace. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And this is just a quick shout out because I just also want to celebrate. I believe Kiki actually just got engaged last week. So congratulations to her. I'm just going to jump in and say that. I have one question, and I know we're going to wrap in a second for some Q&A if you guys have any. So drop those questions in. But so my experience with this kind of immediate grief, mine is shorter lived than the rest of you women. But one thing I learned about last year in my grief was the concept of secondary loss. So sometimes that can mean losing friendships, losing previous relationships, how they change. Sometimes that can be financial. Sometimes that can just be an overall loss of identity and sense of self. And so after all, grief is literally life-shattering. So Kiki, I would love to start with you on this because I think you've had some time and this has probably evolved for you a little bit. But how has grief, whether that's of your mother or of your business, affected your identity and like your sense of self over the last, and how's that changed through these 20 years?
So I think having like a really major loss when I was young basically mapped out the rest of my life. And I had a very, very wonderful school counselor when I was in high school who warned me about this. She said, you're not just going to be sad now. You're not just going to miss her now, but like at significant points in your life, you're going to want her more than anything else. And that has like echoed in my head every single time something major has happened. And for me, I mean, obviously you can't compare losing a restaurant and losing a parent. Those are vastly different senses of loss. I can tell you about how I'm processing these things. And like obviously like losing a parent can be like completely like world shaking. And losing your livelihood, like I feel like I was prepared for that. So I lost my mom before Facebook existed, before Instagram, before people started talking about grief like in a really public context. So I had to reckon with it first, very, very privately. And I was also very young, and so I didn't really know anybody else who had lost their parents. And Marissa, my mom had MS as well. So the way that I dealt with that and continue to deal with it like is pretty much the way that I deal with like any sort of like earth-shattering loss. So I come from a very traditional Chinese family that is very, very concerned with protocol. And in some, like losing my mother made it difficult for her to defend me, you know, when like the entire family is like picking on you, like there was nobody standing in the way. So I had to be stronger because of that. And it also forced me to figure out who I was as a person without somebody telling me what to do. So of course, that's a blessing and a curse. And that is essentially how somebody from a very traditional Chinese family managed to open a restaurant in Philadelphia, very, very far away from home, because the path that I took in life was my own. There was nobody really telling me what to do. And closing the restaurant for me was a very, very public thing. I of course, it was like, as soon as it was like out of social media, like the waves of grief from like all over the country coming in, like it was like I didn't own that grief anymore. It didn't. And I had operated Poor Dog for 8 years. So at that point, it had been something that was like outside of myself. Like, yes, I had a hand in the creation, I had a hand in like guiding this this sort of beast, but it wasn't really mine anymore. Granted, like I feel like I blacked out for 2 weeks. And but at the same time, like I'm an adult now, and I had a platform that allowed me to write 2 like closing essays about closing a restaurant. One that came out right the day that we closed. So what I did was I frequently write for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I didn't want anybody else to tell my story. I didn't want any of the white dude reporters to like report the news about my restaurant, my Hawaii style restaurant closing. Like I want to be able to tell my own news. So I have a new editor at the Inquirer. I adore her, and I called her and was just like, hey, I have this idea, and also I'm closing my restaurant, but can you please keep that to yourself until I send you what I wrote? And she was totally on board. And she's like, yeah, I want you to tell your own story. I want everybody, like, people of color, if you're making food and you're capable of telling your story, like, please do so. So I did that. And I felt like being able to control the narrative and being able to tell people, this is what this thing meant to me, but this is also what this thing meant to the culture that we cultivated around it and to other people, was so meaningful that it helped me gain a lot of closure. Of course, closing a restaurant is a months-long process, and there are many like legal things that have to be taken care of, and a lot of like moving and muck and things like that. But writing about it and like being able to tell the story and not having anybody else tell that story has helped me sort of like crawl out of this entire situation.
Thank you for sharing that. It seems there's a theme in that writing and sharing has been really beneficial to all of us. So thank you. And everyone should be able to find those articles as well, those essays. I know we have a couple questions and we are coming at time, but I have one question that I really want to ask everyone. It's a little lighter, but I asked my Instagram followers back, I think it was back in May. I think it was around the anniversary of my dad's death. What I call their grief food. I post on my account, or at least I try to, really pretty pictures of nice looking food. But the truth of the matter is that half the time in my darkest moments, I am just eating nachos. Or something like that. And so I wanted to ask everyone here, what's kind of and it does not have to be homemade. So I think maybe Kiki's is that noodle dish that I'm dying to try now. But what's everyone's grief food? I'll start with Gabby.
Everybody that knows me knows that when I'm hungry, I don't know what to eat. I eat pizza, or I eat burgers. Maybe more. It used to be more burgers, but now because of the pandemic, my mom used to say, if you're hungry and you don't know what to eat, just eat a slice of pizza, and that's what I eat, and it makes me feel better, you know.
It's hard to believe she wasn't a New Yorker too.
No, I know. Well, adopted New Yorker.
Yes, of course. Marissa, what's your grief food?
So when I am at my best, it's roast chicken. You know, I've shared my roast chicken with you. Like that was my mom's thing every Sunday. When I'm in a very difficult place, it is Cheez-Its and fruit snacks. Like I turn into a 5-year-old.
Perfect. Kiki, is there anything else besides that amazing sounding noodle dish?
Congee. Like,
ooh, yes.
Yeah, like that fixes everything. Like even when nothing's broken, it fixes it.
That's how I feel about chicken soup. So I think it's the Jewish equivalent.
Yeah.
Like, I'm with you. Well, thank you. It was funny when I shared that, and I asked the community what there's almost every answer involved cheese. So take what you will with that, and the American diet. Carrie, do you want to just jump back in? I know that we have a couple of questions and I just want to leave time in case we have a few more. I could keep talking to you ladies for hours. I have 1,000 more questions, but thank you all so much for sharing your stories and being so brave to talk about this really hard stuff, but still being able to smile about it. So I appreciate that, even if you don't have to smile. So Carrie, I'll pass it to you.
Hi, everybody. And thank you, I mean, for all the beautiful answers and the beautiful advice. Our first question comes from Audrey, and it's for Kiki, but Kiki, I think you pretty much answered it about closing your restaurant. And I very much appreciate your advice about controlling your own narrative. I think that's very powerful in so many respects. We have an anonymous question. How do you talk to your family and friends about your loss in a way that helps them understand what you're going through? Katie, why don't we have you answer this, since you haven't answered any?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I'm still learning how to do that. I'm still learning. It's taken me some time and will continue to take me time to learn how to ask what I need and ask what I want, because when you're in the kind of thick of it, and kind of, Kiki, I think you said like you blacked out for 2 weeks. Like there's a lot of 2019 that I barely remember. It's just such a, like, even the holidays last year are so blurry for me. But I think just people, for me, what I learned was that people asking me and wanting to talk about my dad was really comforting, not just wanting to like step aside and worry that they're going to say the wrong thing. But when people, what means the most to me in my grief is when someone comes to me and says, I was just thinking of Norm. He did, you know, I was just thinking of that time that we all went to this place for dinner. He took us to Vietnamese food in South Philadelphia during college and no one understood where we were. Or these kind of funny stories where people want to remember him and ask me what I'm thinking of, and just to be able to have a space to talk about him, I think has been really important to me. And I think I'm learning. I think that sometimes I do it okay, and sometimes I don't know how to talk about it, and I don't know how to ask for what I need. And so I definitely would love to hear what the other folks on this, Marissa especially, how she handles that one.
I mean, it's a really tough question. I've been actually tackling this piece around community building the last 24 hours as I work on my book. And I will tell you, one of the things that I've settled on from when I was younger, like in that space that Katie was just talking about, where I'd like just lost my mom, I honestly didn't feel like anyone was going to get it. And part of it was I had just turned 25. So no one was likely to get it because no one else had really lost anyone. And I also think that as much as there are aspects of grief that are very universal, it's also very personal. You know, I know that the way that my father experiences the loss of his wife is very different from the way that I experience the loss of my mom. And so I think what I've learned over the years is the most important thing is to spend some time with yourself, identifying what you need. And then you just have to be shameless, as hard as it is, when it comes to asking for it. I still struggle with this, just so we're clear. But figuring out what it is that you need and then asking for it, it sounds so simple, but I can almost promise you there are people who are wondering like what to do, what to say, how to approach you. You know, they don't want to hurt your feelings, but they want to help, et cetera, et cetera. So just ask them.
Yeah. I think for me, like the community of Cooking Through Grief has connected me with so many people that I never knew and who never knew my dad, but have similar but different experiences. And I've been able to learn and connect with them in that way. That's helped me learn what I can ask for and what I need. So Marissa's one of those people, but
I love your dad.
Me too.
Gabby, you've been nodding a lot.
I know, I'm listening to Marisa and I wanted to talk to her for 3 hours. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm working on it. It's very hard for me to ask for help.
Mm.
Because and my mom was like that a lot. We inherited the wrong things. It's like, no, I can do it. I can do it. Let me do it. Like so it's very interesting what you just said. And yeah, I mean, I think that thanks to the pandemic, I'm allowing myself this year to be more vulnerable about it. Like I feel like the last 5 years I was just like so busy with work that
Yeah.
I kind of numb myself through the holidays. And now here we are, and it's snowing outside. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for this. So happy to be
Oh,
here.
Gabby, thank you. Kiki, we'll let you answer also. Do you want to add anything?
So don't do what I do. Which I mean, I'm very, very bad at talking about this. Clearly, because it's taken me literally 20 years. I've never been good about this. And I know I do this thing where I deflect, where somebody might ask me, oh, how are you doing? You person with one parent. And I'm like, and so how are your parents? Like, I will just like turn the conversation around. Like, I'd rather not get into it. However, I feel like if somebody else I know close to me who's going through something, it helps me to be able to connect with them and talk to them about the little bits of grief that you don't expect, that nobody warns you about. I was talking to one of my friends who had actually lost her mother to COVID, and she was telling me that she was, I mean, yes, COVID has affected everybody. We've all lost people at this point, but she was so terrified of COVID because it was the disease that killed her mother, not just because of all the other things, but specifically because it was the thing that killed her mother. And I was like, I extremely know what you're talking about. Like there isn't anything that scares me more than MS. Like nothing. Like it is the most terrifying thing to me. Like give me some other disease, not that one. And like I feel like I need somebody else to like talk about their pain first before I can even talk about my own.
Okay, that's understandable. Absolutely. Katie, I'm going to let you sort of have the last word. I'm going to go back to everybody about one other thing. I wanted to go back to the very first question that you asked the panel about how you would normally be celebrating the holidays. And I know there's no normal way to celebrate the holidays, but what would you be doing?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, my family's favorite, best holiday is Thanksgiving. So a little less so Christmas and Hanukkah, but Thanksgiving is where my happiest memories are, in the kitchen with my dad. Usually he would try and last minute change the meal from being a turkey to some obscure piece of meat. One year he made individual quail for every single person there. And then my cousins were very unhappy. He was a real character, and he was a bright light for all of us. And so my family, we all cooked together. We always had a big meal, whether there were 4 of us or whether there were 10 of us, we cooked the same amount of food. And so that's the thing that I miss the most, is the cooking together piece. The eating is great, and we're also an eating family, Kiki. But the cooking together part is what my absolute favorite memories are. And so this year it was just my husband and I here in New York, and we cooked probably enough food just for 10 people, and it was just the 2 of us. So in some ways I tried to bring that same level of enthusiasm and over ordering to the table. But that's the thing that I miss the most.
Well, I feel like I've gotten to know your dad a little bit through social media. And I know at the beginning of this, I kind of blamed social media. You know, it was the reason we wanted to do this panel, because like I said, you're often, you have to put out this false cheerfulness, even if you're not feeling that way. But I think Kiki was listening to you talk about, you said you lost your mom before Facebook even existed. And it made me realize, I feel like we have a new way to remember those who we've lost in a public, almost private way with social media. It's very interesting. You know, you don't have to just remember by yourself. You can, if you feel it, put it out.
It's been very surprisingly cathartic for me. I think sometimes I'll post a story or share a story about him, and I'll post it and I'll cry my eyes out, and then I'll feel a little bit better because I've kind of put it out there into the world and connected that to other people. And hearing from other people through those stories has been what's been so moving to me.
Okay, well, we are going to end things in a little bit of a different fashion because we didn't introduce any of you.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
And no, sorry.
We were supposed to do it, Katie. Sorry.
I know. I didn't know how to bring it back.
We do things sometimes a little backwards here at Cherry Bombe, but that's okay, right? That's life. So because we have such a remarkable group of women here, I would love for each of you just to, take more than a few seconds and just tell us who you are and just, a professional or personal accomplishment that you'd like us to leave with. Why don't Gabby, you're right below me. We'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Gabby Melian. I am a professional chef for 20 years. People might know me from my almost 5 years at Bon Appetit Test Kitchen. I just have one message, and that's the signature under my name. Keep cooking, be happy. That's it.
Absolutely. And Gabby has a YouTube channel that everyone, when we finish this, hop over to YouTube and be sure to follow Gabby and send her a nice message, okay?
Thank you.
All right, Maritza.
Marissa Renee Lee. I am a writer, speaker, and entrepreneur. I also have to admit, I actually worked with Carrie's brother for a brief period in the Obama White House. I have a book coming out in early 2022 called Grief is Love, Living with Loss. You can find me on Instagram. And the thing that I will leave everyone with is just give yourself a break this holiday season. It's hard. You deserve a pass. We all deserve a pass. Go easy.
Marissa, thank you so much. And I hope once your book comes out, we get to reconnect and we can do something with the Cherry Bombe audience around your book. So
that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you
You're
for your time tonight. And Kiki, our good friend Kiki.
So I had to change my bio for, this is the first time I had to change my bio for a panel because I had to put into the past tense. So I was the co-chef and co-owner of Poi Dog, which is a restaurant, food truck and catering business here in Philadelphia. I'm now, I guess, a writer, virtual cooking instructor. I have a new gig. I'm going to be also an instructor at the Penn Museum at some point soon. And I make sauces now. And I've stressed myself out a lot by taking on new projects. But yeah, I bottled 2 of our Poi Dog sauces. They are pretty good, I would like to say. And the thing that the thing that I would like you to leave with is, can I show my dog?
Of course. So Poi Dog does live on as a product company now. So.
Oh my God, Cherry Bombe. I didn't even realize that. Oh my God, that is beautiful.
I made her into the cookbook.
Oh my God, he's so cute.
I'm gonna order one for my much larger dog.
Kiki, you're unbelievable. Thank you so much. And Kiki, a very heartfelt thank you from the team and I, because when we had suggested you for this panel, we had no idea you had lost your mom. You had just been so open and honest about dealing with the closure of Poi Dog. That was why we had asked you to be here tonight. So thank you for, speaking about some of these things for the first time. We're very appreciative.
No, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Like I'm like the turtle that has to be like yanked to head out. Like, thank you for letting me do this. I feel pretty good.
Good. And Katie, I'm going to start crying, so it's a good thing we're about to end. I'm so grateful that we got to meet. Thank you again to my brother for introducing us, but you have been so brave and so honest, and we're grateful to count you as a friend and as a member of our community. So I'll let you get the last word too. Just tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
I don't think I have anything to add to all of that. But this has been such a beautiful experience, and I'm just so grateful that what is an organization that's doing cookie demos can also have these really hard conversations. And I've done both. I was nerding out on some pie demos last over Thanksgiving. So you can follow me on Cooking Through Grief. And I hope to connect with as many people here as possible. And it's so nice to hear other people's stories, and especially from such incredible women. So thank you.
Right, well, I'm gonna brag about Katie for a second. Katie did help our president-elect get elected. So.
All right. I forgot. In my day job, I work in politics, and so I did help just elect Joe Biden. And
just helping save America in her free time.
Well,
talk about stress baking. So thank you all.
That's going to be a whole other panel. That
yes, that is definitely a panel.
So anyway, sending my love to all of you, and I hope you have the happiest holidays, however you all celebrate them. But panel and Katie, a million thank yous. And maybe we'll see you next year, but maybe we'll reconvene this panel when Marissa's book comes out. So
I'd love that.
Okay.
That would be super fun. Thank you.
And to everyone who tuned in tonight, I just want to thank you so much. This was such a special panel, and thank you for all your beautiful comments in the chat. We really appreciate it. I know some of you, posted some very sensitive, vulnerable things, and we appreciate that you trust all of us with that information. So on behalf of the Cherry Bombe team and I just want to wish all of you happy holidays and good luck, with everything. We're going to get through 2020, and brighter days are ahead for 2021. I deeply believe that. So thank you again to our sponsors for all of our holiday baking extravaganza, Kerrygold and Amazon Home. It's really wonderful of you to underwrite all this programming so we can keep it free. We've got the aforementioned cookie demos. We've got the cookie demos, babka. We're doing a lot of demos over the next several days. So definitely go to cherrybombe.com. And if you want to have just a little break and a fun, hour, sign up for one of our demos. They're, as Katie can attest, they're great.
Really fun.
Exactly. So thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Bye.